and that's me. So, let's see here, I need to change notebooks. The name of the program today is How Water Built Bemis. And I've got a clicker here. Which way did I go? Think that way? You want that way? Okay. I'm an old timer. I don't know all that, just fangled stuff. But if you'll notice, this is a mouth of Cane Creek. Now, Cane Creek was one of the reasons that Bemis was built here. If it hadn't been for Cane Creek, there wouldn't have been a Bemis, because one of the stipulations for building a cotton mill was to have a continuous year-round source of water from the creek. And so Mr. Bemis sent out people and looking, and sure enough they found this place here in South Jackson. And besides that, they had to have a good supply of help, and farmers were ready to work because they were not making a lot of money in 1900. And then they had to have a railroad. And you know that the railroad was real close. And so all those stipulations. But the main one we're going to talk about today is Cane Creek to start with. If you'll see the blue line, that's Cane Creek. The green line at the top is Forked River. And it ends up down here at the bottom. You can see right there on the bottom. That's where Cane Creek starts at. Let me get mine. Right at the end there on the blue line is Mount Pinson Road, and there's nothing there. You have to have a map, a complete map of Madison County to figure that out. And it's a big ditch there, and any water that falls on Mount Pinson Road goes into that big hole, and it eventually gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it makes that big turn, gooseneck there. And right there is where Ivy Hall Event Center is, as it crosses the Riverside Drive. Then it continues on into Bemis. It comes through and stops temporarily at the dam, which we'll cover in a few minutes. And it goes through Bemis and makes a little G. And that little last section of blue, before it hits the green, it's going down the side of the IC Railroad right away. IC built a drainage ditch, and that's where Cane Creek ends up. And then it ends up down there. And just recently, I said recently, last fall, the West Tennessee Basin Authority went to Forked River and cleaned out a lot of sand, and that's supposed to help the Cane Creek to run. But that's one reason we have a Cane Creek. There we go. Now this is the dam at Cane Creek. This is upstream, or the south side, and it's a swimming hole. And 1924, I had a Bemis Mill Ends publication, which said that Mr. So-and-so, I don't forget his name, is giving swimming lessons at the falls. And that was the official swimming pool for Bemis until 1926, which we'll cover later in this program. But if you'll notice, there was some ropes hooked to something in the water. And what that was big wooden plates that covered up the hole. And they would drop those plates down over the three holes and make that fill up as a swimming hole. But once it filled up as a swimming hole, it diverted the water off to the right and down a concrete sluice, or kind of like a gutter, only it was kind of deep, and it ran the water to the end of 4th Street. And when it got to 4th Street, it went underground, and we'll cover that in a few minutes. The next picture good thing we got David back there. The next picture is below the dam, and you'll see the three big brown spots at the bottom of the dam, and that's where the water would come through normally. And then when they dropped the plates on the other side, the wooden mountain or whatever, it stopped coming through. Above is the bridge, and you could walk across that to stay out of the creek. And Rosalie painted that picture. Whoop, going the wrong way. Too forward. There we go. Whoop, back. Okay. If you'll notice that there's a bridge above, and down below is the dam itself, and it looks like an addition to the top of the concrete, and it's split all the way across. In 1920, the insurance company said that it didn't have enough water in the Bemis mill pond to fight a fire with, so they made them raise the level in the mill pond. To raise the level in the mill pond, they had to make the dam higher, and they brought put that 2-foot extra section extra onto the top, and that way they gained I forget how many thousands of gallons extra in the mill pond, and it went from 3.5 to 5.5 feet deep, which increased a lot of water. If you notice, there's Freddie Thomason. He's standing, and I took his picture when we were up there looking. And that's the structure of the bridge itself, to show that it was well built. It wasn't just a 2x4 bridge. It was a steel structure that made that bridge. Okay. Okay. The next one. If you look to the top left of the blue, there's a green spot on it, and that's the dam. And going south from that's a blue line, that's the sluice way that I was referring to earlier. And then it comes down and turns to the right, and there's 2 blue lines. One of those blue lines was a tile pipe, and it went all the way, if you'll notice, to the mill pond over here on the right bottom. The octagonal shaped object. And once they decided the mill pond needed more water, they had put another line in, which is a steel pipe this time, and then run another line of water into the mill pond to bring that level up, make sure it had a good source, because the vertical line over to the left had a tendency to get leaves and trash and stuff in it and stop it up. And the little green spots as you go along, the 2 blue ones, Those were what I call giant manholes. And another name was, they called them clean-out bunkers. And there was 7 of them as you go along from the dam to the mill pond. And if things got stocked up, the plumbing department had to take an auger, and then they only had to go about 100 feet because there's 100 feet basically between each one. And they would clean up and let the water till the water flowed. And that was the job for Bemis plumbers. Okay, next. Now that is a picture of what we call the bunkers, or the clean-out spots, or the giant manholes. That one in particular is that in the middle of the lawn on 2nd Street, and it's available for sponsorship. If you'd like to have your family remembered, you put, we call it a 2nd Street bunker, clean-out bunker, in memory of John Doe, and we'll put it right to the side of that, and people going by will see it, and they'll know what that is. It's not just a piece of concrete, but it's a clean-out bunker. Okay, next. Now we have a guy who helped put Bemis on the map, and his name is Samuel Christopher Lancaster. And if you'll notice there, he was born on a significant date of 1865. That was the end of the Civil War. And he died in 1941. Actually, after I was born. I was born in 40. But he attended Southwestern Baptist University, which became Union University. And why we're talking about him is because he was a vital part of Bemis. But he worked for the city of Jackson. He became a civil engineer for the I-C Railroad at the age of 20. He would go up and down the railroad, deciding how the right-of-ways were to be designed, how they were to be cut, where the drainage was to go. And he quit that job after basically 1 year and got a job with the Colorado and the Santa Fe Railroad again, a civil engineer. Then he quit that job, went to the Texas Pacific Railroad as a civil engineer. So he's getting a lot of experience. But at that time, he caught polio. And he was 21 years old. And he was bedridden for 2 years, during which time he designed his own walker, how to get around, probably something like we've got today, to give himself some exercise so that he could recover. He thought he could recover if he could just walk. And sure enough, it worked. And if you'll notice, I said that the Shriners adopted his design for a walker back in 1888. So his Mr. Lancaster, who had a good Bemis connection, designed what we call a walker, that 2 or 3 of you here use them today. When he got up and going after his polio, he came back to Jackson, got him a sit-down job. He was civil engineer for the city of Jackson from 1888 to 1906. That was his first job after polio. That's 12 and 6 is 18 years. He was a civil engineer for the city of Jackson. During which time, 1906, Bemis came into existence in 1900. And Mr. Young heard all about him and found out that he was a civil engineer and also working in the water department as a civil engineer. And he got with Mr. Whiteley, who was a civil engineer here in Bemis, and they started needing to know where to drill some wells for the city of Bemis, which was under construction. So he came out to Bemis and showed them, said, drill here, 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 and 4 places. We'll have that in just a minute. But he was also a civil engineer, he became chief engineer for the Roads Commission in Jackson from 1903 to 1905. And he helped get what we call novaculite gravel in Jackson. But I'd already heard that Bemis had that novaculite gravel on the streets. And they were not mud in Bemis. They had novaculite. And so he got a train load or car load or whatever it took, come down the railroad right out here and unloaded. And they'd done all the streets in Bemis so that it wouldn't be mud. But he was actually still on payroll for the city of Jackson. But Mr. J.B. Young became good friends with him. He was also a consulting engineer on public roads, and he went to Washington, D.C. to help him. You have to remember, 1900 and 1905, roads, there were no interstates or nothing else much. And he became an engineer at the University of Washington, and he actually went to the Congress of Roads in Paris, France in '08. But he became a teacher, and he went to the Columbia River Gorge. And I didn't know anything about the Columbia River Gorge until I found this. And it's very famous out west in the Columbia River, Oregon area. And he oversaw a tunnel through a big mountain out there called the Hood River Tunnel, and published a book or two. And he's kind of semi-retired back in Delaware, helping landscape around Delaware. And because of his expertise in Bemis, Jackson, Oregon, so forth, he built a series of lodges out west, and they were named the Lancaster Lodges. And he went on down to the Grand Canyon and did some work, and he died of leukemia, 1941. Next, if you see that it says February '02, that was hard to find out. That's the well we see on South Royal Street where we go by now, and it was very well known back in the 30s. But he named it the Calaviti well. What Calaviti is, he invented that, I think. But I found an old record in the old newspaper that said that it was February of '02. They hit a gusher. It was called the Gusher. And the people that come there, Indiana wants to drink this wonderful water, and they even built a 54-acre park. So he was a well-known person, and we borrowed him for Bemis. And they had goldfish, lily pads, and so forth, and actually had a zoo there. My daddy told me that when he was a teenager, they found a great big chicken snake out in the barn or somewhere, and they heard about this zoo. So they said, I bet the zoo don't have a snake like this. So they took him and put him in a 5-gallon bucket and called him up, and he filled the bucket full. And they put the lid on it, walked it into the town. Actually, he lived out on close by. Can't even think of it. And they walked over to the zoo. Asked the guy, "Would you? Am I losing power? Yeah. Would you like a snake? And we'll take $1 for him for your zoo." He says, "No, I don't need a snake." And so they said, 50 cents? He says, "No. You want him for free? I don't want him at all. I don't need a snake." So they didn't know what to do. So they just left the bucket sitting there and went back home. And I don't know who found the snake or what they did with the snake, but Daddy said they didn't want him back at the farm. But it was a chicken snake probably, and he would have been good to catch rats. But this well was the centerpiece of this park. Next. Well, I think I just not told that. Okay, go to the next one. Okay, this tells what Mr. Lancaster knew about the land. If you'll notice over to the right, upper right corner, there's what they call a recharge zone. Water goes in there and flows down in between different layers of clay. And as it goes through under different ones, it kind of cleanses it itself. And they have names there. At the top one's called the Clayton Clay Formation. Below that's the Ripley Water. Then you got another clay formation called Porter Confining Layer. And then we have some Holly Springs. And Bemis water comes out of Holly Springs. Jackson City water comes out of Holly Springs. Now the land is not really like that, it's just in straight lines, but they did that to explain how it gets into there. But we drink Holly Springs water, and the Holly Springs water, according to Steve Bowers, is some of the best water in the world. Isn't that right, Steve? Anyway, next. Okay, we have the different wells. Mr. Lancaster came to Bemis, and he told them, said, put one right here. Well, that was at A Street and Tennessee Street, basically under the mill tank was where it was located. And it was only 174 feet when it hit water. And then there was another one just a few feet to the south, and it was basically the same address, A Street and Tennessee. And they hit good water at 166. And then there was another one. It was actually in the driveway, and it was a place where the public could drink water, and it just bubbled all the time. And the water went into the mill pond, which was like 20 feet away. And then there was another one in the alley by the swimming pool. And you go by there right now, and there, you can still see where the well house caved in. You can see part of the pump still sitting there. That's the only relic of all these wells. But it's at the base of the mill hill. Turn left, turn south. And the number one well was fed into a concrete building, which is still there. We call it the aerator. And it's 10 feet deep of water. And they would aerate water and spray it up in the air. The reason they did that is to make it taste better. Water with more air in it, it seems to taste better to the taste buds. But and this is where they built a big water tank. And it was made with cedar shingles. And I've done a little research, and the same concept that they make whiskey barrels was used to make that big water tower. It had big cedar things in it, put a band around it, and then they put shingles on top of that to help seal it in. And the shingles would expand, and there wasn't a drop of water got out of that thing, and it was just made out of pieces of wood. And that was for household use. And so that water went from the aerator to the water system around Bemis. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Oh, in 1947 they tore it down. And I was going to school in the second grade. And they were throwing pieces of shingles off of the thing, and I was like 30 feet away from where the stuff was being hitting the ground. And I just made sure I didn't get hit. But where was EPA in 1947? They should have had that thing fixed where I couldn't get close to it. But they tore it down in 47 and made a steel tank. And this right here is a picture of the steel version, which is on the side of the building out here. I'm looking for somebody that knows how to scrub with steel brush and repaint that thing. uh, 1999, tornado came and took the top off, and it laid on the ground for 15 years, and finally somebody decided they could sell it, so they come and picked it up. Okay, next. After Bemis was first built, before before they got it piped to the house, there were only 54 houses in Bemis at that time, and they did what they call a hand auger. Two people took a auger and walked around a circle and dug a well, basically 20 to 30 feet, and they hit water. And but they built a well between each two houses, and so the 54 houses only had to have 27 wells, but they were hand-augered wells. And you'll notice there's an orange, a highlighted orange there, and they put, those are 10-foot sections of a pipe. And if they needed to go down a little further, they just added up on top another section, screw it together, and keep digging. But there was hand auger, no horses, just people. Okay, next. Now, what they ended up with was a hole that was basically 8 to 10 inches, or maybe 12 inches deep, and they put these what we call galvanized well buckets, and you can see the picture there, and you've probably seen them advertised, maybe one in person. But you dropped it down the well, and it was 4 inches in diameter and 52 inches long, and it holds 2 gallons. And they've been making that same bucket since 1860, I think it was, when they started making this style. And you can buy them today from Lehman's company. It's an Amish company, and you know how the Amish are, they like to do things the old-fashioned way. And so you can still buy these things online, and $99 for one of them, plus shipping. Next picture. We have one of these right outside the door here as you go out on the left. It's called an outdoor hydrant. To get rid of that well, which we just dug by hand between each house, Bemis had put in a water line up and down the back alleys. Now, they put them in the back alley because it was dirt there. They didn't want to go down the street with all the no vacuolite gravel. And so this hydrant was put between every other house, and they started installing in 1908. And you had to bring the water inside in a bucket. But you had a sink once you got inside. But you had to set this bucket of water on the drain board, and you had another bucket underneath. You didn't have a sewer line, so you had a sink with no water, basically. I mean, with no running water. And but it came from this hydrant. This hydrant was weatherproof. It was the cutoff was like 18 to 24 inches under the ground. And because it was that deep, when it froze everywhere else, your water still came, you could still get water. And you just went out and turned it on. The cutoff is also, is what was below ground level. This was put in, turn to the next one. Started in 1905. And the same style hydrant or faucet or whatever is still being manufactured by the Murdoch Manufacturing Company in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I couldn't get a price without giving them my credit card and all that kind of stuff, so I didn't want to mess with it. But you can still get it. And they started making these things in 1853, and they're still making them 24. One of the things that when you don't have a car or a truck, you had to have horses. Well, in order to have horses, you needed a barn. And the barn that we had originally was right outside here, where the traffic has to go left or right as you come into Bemis, that was the horse barn. And the office was right in front of that. It's a stinky place for an office, or a bad place for a horse barn. And they moved the horse barn over on to Butler Street, and which originally was called Congo. And they built a big, beautiful barn. The first floor is concrete, but right down front, middle ways, there's an artesian well for the horses. They had to have water, so they put that artesian well there. At the first part of the meeting, I referred to the city of Jackson coming and fixing the water in the ditch on Butler Street. It's the same artesian well, still full, that they had in 1908 is when they built the thing. And it's become a problem now instead of a plus. This drawing right here is from Rosalie's collection in her coloring book. This next one is, okay, yeah, that's right. In 1917, they built a Rosenwald School down on the corner from the horse barn, and they needed water for the kids. Well, what they did, they built a fountain right there on the corner of Butler and 2nd Street in front of the school, which is still standing. Lucy was here earlier. I don't see her right now. Yeah, she's gone. But she was in charge of that, and she got it, Rosenwald School restored. But they run the water about 100 feet from the horse barn down to the corner for the kids. And they inside they had to come outside and get a drink. And also they had toilets outside too. Okay, next. That was 1917. In 1926, there was another water situation. People in Bemis had outdoor toilets for a long time, and on the back alley, backed up to the back alley. But in 26, they started building these wood sheds. If you'll notice the little window on the left there, that is the toilet area. The double windows are actually car barns, which you come in from the other side. So that particular building housed a toilet and 2 car barns. There's all kinds of variations. Some of them have 3 toilets and no car barns, but that's what that particular picture shows. And they started building those in 1926 and put in running water in them. And people were really appreciative for that. Next. In 1907 or 8, somewhere about the same time they put the horse barn in, there was a guy named Kelly who was coming around town, and he was building, he was digging wells, artesian wells, because he'd go down like 300 and 400 feet deep. Most everybody else had wells of 30, 40 feet. But if you remember the YMCA, the men's Y, as you come out the front door, you run into the end of Young Street. So this predates Young Street, because the Silver Circle was not built until 21, and this was 17, and 08, and there was a well drilled right there, because that was a ball field. There's a fire plug sitting at home plate right now. If you go outside, and the field is over towards Joe White's house. And if you hit a home run, you hit his house. But if you were left-handed. But anyway, that's where the ball field was. That's our first ball field. This is before they even had a YMCA or anybody organized ball. But that was, so they built a well for ball players to have water right there. It was basically where the wading pool for Stella Duncan Park was located. They've done away with the also, but and when they done away with that, in 1913, that same well for the ball players was piped to the other end of that block, and this was the second location for that same well. This is Judson Moss Bemis Fountain, which is up there running today. But it has city water in it now, and not artesian. But for the first 50 years, it had artesian water, and it run continuously. Mr. Enos Theus, who was a plumber, a black plumber, he told me that he cleaned those pipes out, or he put new pipes in twice during his tenure with Bemis as a plumber, because artesian water traveling that far would collect all the scum and all that yellow stuff inside the pipe and stop it up. And so his job was to put down new pipes so that the Judson Moss Bemis Fountain would operate. Another thing about the comes in line after the woodsheds and the fountain. 26, there was a good use of water. People really got excited about this. This is a swimming pool. They put the swimming pool in 1926. I did a program one time about 2 tragedies in Bemis, and one of them was in 1926, July the 4th, July the 5th, day after a grand opening. They opened the swimming pool on July the 4th, and the next day, a 12-year-old boy drowned in there. And I had his tombstone and his family and all that stuff in the story. But everybody really appreciated the 1926 water addition to Bemis, and that helped build the whole. That helped build the whole town. And I believe that's the end of it, isn't it? Right. So as you notice, there's lots of different uses for water in Bemis. Fun, necessary, and even had a bathhouse. I forgot to talk about that. There was a bathhouse built, and there's a picture back here on the wall. And I thought it was a bathhouse, and everybody calls it a bathhouse, but all my research said it was a wash house. You could wash clothes there, and because you could get super hot water out of the mill, which was like 200 feet away, you could wash your clothes in real good hot soapy water with P&G soap, and you was clean for a month. And but there's different aspects of water, and that's what built Bemis. That's the end of my program.